I am the big tank.
On the battlefield of life, nothing's harder than a tank. Yeah, have you ever met a man heart's full of love bigger than a tank?
Big tank.
He served in a few wars. He's a veteran that stands for a cause. For the best interviews and news, just keep it glued to the
Tank. I
tank.
am the tank. Big
Big
tank.
Tank Talk.
Tank.
Big Tank Talk.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Big Tank Talk. As you see, I'm not Big Tank. Today, we're going to be interviewing Big Tank. So, technically, it's an episode of Just Matthew Talk today. We'll be back to Big Tank next week. How are we doing today, Big Tank?
Oh, I'm good. I'm kind of interested to see what kind of questions I'll be asked today.
Well, we got 16 questions for you today. 15 of them are from your subscribers right here on YouTube. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Question that quite a few people asked actually is, where did the name Big Tank come from?
All right. Believe it or not, I got the nickname of Tank playing basketball. I was playing a low post position, and the guy that was guarding me was like 5'8", 135 pounds. And he was trying to move me out from my spot. And he's like, man, moving you is like trying to move a tank. And everybody heard that. And I was Tank from then on.
Great. And just decided to throw in the big because,
I'm a big guy.
Right. All right. Well, most people know that you were in the service.
Yep, I was Navy.
Navy to be specific. How many years did you serve in the Navy?
I served 6 years on active duty and 4 more in reserves. And once they started treating me like I was active duty as a reservist, I was done.
Understandable. Two different categories there. They can't act like they're the same.
Exactly.
So what did you do before the Navy?
Before the Navy, I was I worked for the city of Virginia Beach at Mount Trashmore Park. I worked on their boat dock. I delivered pizzas. I went a year of college. Just kind of tried different jobs here and there. And I even worked for a company to install and repair pools. And I decided there was no future for any of that stuff, and I was going to go ahead and join the Navy. I did that at age 20.
Hear that? He got out of working on pools because tanks don't float. So what was your childhood like? Like parents, siblings. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have 3 brothers and a sister. My oldest brother is 11 months older than me. And then I have a sister that's a year and a half younger. And then a brother that's 3.5 years younger. And then a brother that's 15 years younger.
Okay, so what was your childhood like growing up with them?
I say I had a typical childhood. I played Little League sports. My brother was my best friend growing up. I didn't even learn to make friends on my own until he left for the Navy a year before I graduated high school. And then I had to actually start talking to people, and I found out I have the gift of gab and I can talk. So I started making my own friends, and that started trying to figure things out for myself, and that's kind of how it went until I joined the Navy.
Okay. So what were your parents like? What'd they do for a living?
My father was he spent 15 years in the Navy doing the exact same job that I did in the Navy. We were both machinist mates. He got out after 15 years and went directly into civil service. And he worked, he actually controlled money on, he was a money controller on $1 million projects for the military, but as a contractor. My parents divorced when I was still just a kid, 8 or 9 years old, maybe. My mother remarried. My stepfather was he was a piece of work, but that's all I'll say about that.
Fair
But
enough.
my mother was the disciplinarian as I was growing up. She's Italian, and she's your typical Italian mom. No, you don't backtalk an Italian mother because you find out real quick why not.
I understand I have a very strong Italian grandmother. I get it.
But she's a loving mother and grandmother. She's still with us. She's 79 years old and probably healthier than I am. My dad died when I was 27. He was 51.
And you're now 60,
I'm
60,
60.
correct?
I'll be
Coming
61 in
up on
April.
61 in April. All right. Well, assuming I know part of the next answer, since you said your father was also Navy, who or what inspired you to go into the Navy?
Honestly, the fact that my dad was in the Navy had no bearing on it whatsoever. My stepfather was Navy, which was actually a reason not to join the Navy. I didn't want to be like him. I think what finally led me to join the Navy is I couldn't afford to go to school. At that point, I would never even consider taking student loans. And at 20 years old, I needed to have a direction. And joining the military gives you a purpose, and and the things they teach you are things that you carry into the world after your military service.
Okay. I don't disagree at all. I myself did not serve, but I am a huge supporter of everyone who did serve. So I'll take this moment to say, even though I've said it to you lots of times already, and I know plenty of other people have, but thank you for your service, Tank.
And I'd like to flip that around and thank everyone who has a family member that joined the military, because it's just as hard to be a family of somebody who's gone, for months or more than a year at a time, and wonder if they're okay. It's different when you can see them every day, but when they're gone, and you just got to hope they're okay and hope you hear from them regularly. It's not easy being a part of a military family. I know you were. So I just flip that back around and say thank you for everybody who had family in the military.
Yes, not just the people who serve or the people who go through stuff. The families serve with them.
Absolutely.
So who inspires you now?
Well, it would depend on what you're talking about. What am I being inspired for? For the positivity stuff, my biggest inspiration is the knowledge that I survived a stroke 2 years ago. Um, uh, but inspires me in my day-to-day living, it has to be Tabby, my girlfriend. She takes excellent care of me, and she makes me want to be better.
And now, speaking of being better, I wanted to kind of work this in. 'Cause I've combined quite a few questions from your subscribers to try to fit everything that everyone wanted to know. You mentioned Tabby being your inspiration. I'm sure in the previous years, you have any children?
I have two grown daughters. Mary is 25 and Olivia is 21.
And I'm sure children have been, over the years, quite an inspiration. Just being a parent, you get inspired to do better.
Absolutely. Like any parent, like any decent parent, I want better for my children than I had growing up, and I had a pretty good childhood. So I hope their childhood is not as bad as it could have been, and parts of it was because my marriage was ugly. My ex is an abuser, and I was the victim during the marriage throughout. And I'm not talking verbal; I'm talking physical and emotional as well. And I think it was with the thought of what my children were going through while I was in that marriage that kind of inspired me to get out of it. Um, and I've done my best to make life as normal for them post marriage as I could. Now they're grown, so it's on them to do that. And Mary has children as well, so I hope she figures out what's best for her kids and doesn't put them through some of the things they had to go through.
Hopefully. So now that leads me to my next question. Do you have any dreams you're still working to fulfill?
The dream that I had the longest, and it goes all the way back to when I was in junior high school, because there was no middle school when I was a kid. But when I was in junior high school, I decided I wanted to be a writer and be published. Um, last year before maybe, I finally published a poetry book that I wrote while I was going through the divorce in the first year or two after that. And it's self-published, so it's not, you're not going to find it on any bestseller list. But where you can find it is if you're on Clapper, it's in my bio. If not, if you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube and you're interested in the book, let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to send you the link so we can find it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was trying to figure out how I was going to work into one of these questions that you have a book out, self-published. That's awesome. And I believe you mentioned it. It's a poetry book. For anyone who likes poetry, go check out his book. Whichever way he is on y'all's screen.
It's more than just poetry, but poetry is the focus.
Yes. Has being in the Navy had any effect on your political views? I don't want to get too political, because we know how politics and religion can create stress between people, but has it had any effect on your political views?
If anything, it strengthened my political views and where I'm at. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm politically conservative, which is not to say I don't have an open mind or consider other ways of seeing things, but that's my default. I default as conservative. I'm happy to explain my views, and if my views and someone else disagree, that does not mean we can't be friends. That's something people seem to have forgotten these days, is you can disagree and still be friends.
Right.
That's also why I generally don't discuss politics among my friends.
Right. Just because people have differences of opinions doesn't mean that they can't be together and still have differences of opinions. You don't have to agree with everything that your friends agree with.
Another thing too, politicians are now setting a bad example. They can't work together. They can't, they know what compromise is anymore. If they can't get along, they're setting the example for the public, and a lot of the public is just eating that up and following that example. And that's why I tend to stay away from it.
The blind leading the blind. So, did your time in the Navy have any effect on your family, do you think? Positive or negative?
No, I don't think.
Current family you have now,
Well, the family I have now is long after my Navy time. I joined the Navy when I was 20. I got out of reserves when I was 31.
So did it have any effect when you first got out? Did you have any troubles?
No trouble really. I had to find work again, which I was more skilled, so I had better possibilities for work. But you have to remember, I'm also a Navy brat. So having somebody in a family that joined the military and leave for a 6-month cruise or whatever was nothing new in my family when I was a child. Certainly nothing new when I joined the Navy and I became the one that was going out, on sea duty and stuff. So as far as that goes, no direct influence in the family. And I was single until I was 35. So my military time was completely done before I had the marriage and long before Tabby and I got together.
Very nice. And this isn't on my list of questions, and I already know the answer. I just find it neat information. Where were you stationed, Tank?
Uh, I was stationed for, I went to school in Orlando, Florida, Navy Nuclear Power School, and I flunked out. Um, Biggest reason for that is I was bugged with migraines during that time. And Navy Nuclear Power School is a 3.5 year nuclear science curriculum taught in 22 weeks. And when you start having issues with migraines, it doesn't help. But after that, I was home ported in Norfolk, Virginia, and the ship that I was assigned to was named the Sixth Fleet Flagship. I got volunteered. There's another story behind that, but I got volunteered to stay and spent 2 years home ported in Gaeta, Italy.
That's the part I find really neat for all of y'all that didn't know. Tank literally lived in Italy for 2 years. It's pretty impressive. I've never made it that far across the pond.
I being in the Navy gave me the opportunity to see a lot of places and a lot of really neat stuff.
Okay, so we're going to start steering a little away from the Navy part of it and get over into, well, kind of what you do on here. So, do you think your service in the Navy affected your music aspirations in any way? And if so, how?
If anything, being in the military put a hold on that. Truthfully, I've always wanted to know how to play guitar, and I tried teaching myself when I was significantly younger, and I was not a good teacher. So I set it down and walked away from it. Never really considered it again until I got on the clapper and discovered so many wonderful musicians. I do want to shout out Rockin' Papa Classic. I think it's Rockin' Papa Classic Rock is his full clapper name. It was watching one of his videos, and I made a comment. I'd really love to learn how to play the guitar, and his response back was, "Well, I'll be happy to teach you right here on Clapper." So I said, "Okay." Now all I got to do is get a guitar. Well, then I did have a friend on the wings of a dragonfly said she had a guitar she'd be happy to send to me, and she did. And since then, I've been taking lessons with Rockin' Papa right there on Clapper.
I was going to bring up, you're currently back into learning guitar from trying to teach yourself years ago. You're currently learning now at the age of 60, learning how to play guitar.
And I've learned a lot more since I started learning from Rockin' Papa than I ever taught myself.
I mean, I've seen him play. He's an amazing guy to learn from. He's excellent at what he does.
Yes, he is.
So let's see. Who was your first concert you attended?
Well, you're going to make me think, huh?
Yeah.
Going way. Realistically, the first concert I ever saw was Farron Young. He's what you'd call classic country from the,
Okay.
he was in the 50s, 60s. I was 13, so it was mid 70s, 1976. And the concert was at Disney World. And he was performing at Disney World. So he was the first concert I was ever at. As far as, I didn't go to any other concert as a child. The only reason I could go to that because I was with my dad and my stepmother. But the first concert I went to on my own, I want to say Kansas, maybe. That would have been 81, 82. And then Rush. And Rush is my favorite band, so that's the one that's strongest in my memory.
Gotcha. Okay, well, you sort of answered this. What band or artist is your favorite still to this day?
Oh, Rush, without a doubt.
And now, just because I know the answer, who's your favorite artist, Tank? Individual artist. Well, sorry, favorite song, I should say, and who's it by?
Oh, my favorite song is "If I Can Dream" by Elvis Presley. He was always my favorite artist. I was 14 when he passed. If I had to pick one today, probably Trace Atkins.
Okay. All right.
I love his voice, and I can almost sing his songs. Almost.
All right. So we're gonna make you think a little more on this one.
I ain't
If you
scared.
if you could change one thing from your past, and I think I know your answer is the same as mine, and you probably wouldn't change anything because it got you to this point in your life. But if you had to change something, what would be one thing you would change from your past?
Honestly, I would probably do 20 years in the Navy.
Okay, so you would actually serve longer.
Yeah, even though I have a tendency to, and maybe people that know me now don't know this as much. But back when I was in the Navy, I did have a tendency to speak my mind, and it didn't matter who it was to, and that got me a little trouble while I was in. But at the end of the day, the Navy was far better for me than any of the negatives that I took from it. And I think I would have probably benefited if I had done 20 plus years in the Navy before getting out and seeing what the rest of the world had to offer.
Okay. All
As
right.
far as personal stuff, as bad as my marriage was, and it was bad, I got my daughters from it. So really, I wouldn't change anything, because if I was to wish that didn't happen, then I would wish I don't have my kids. And I love my daughters, so that wouldn't happen.
That's what we call looking at that silver lining of the storm clouds there. All right. And last question from your subscribers. How did the idea for Big Tank Talk, this show, come about?
Well, I have to shout out some people that I used to be friends with. Um, I was impromptu hired as manager for Bros. Bros is a country / hip hop group, quite talented. Um, and one of the members, who is a significantly known DJ in Atlanta named DJ Boo, suggested that I would do well doing an interview show like Big Tank Talk. And I was shown how to get a channel set up, and I did it. And I started interviewing people. So regardless of how things ended with Bros, I have nothing but respect for them and wish nothing but success for them. But Big Tank Talk goes on.
I've heard their music. They're quite skilled. And now, as I said, that was the last question from your subscribers. I have a personal question I added in. As you've mentioned a couple of times throughout this interview, that you're over on an app called Clapper, which is an adult app, 18 plus, where, adults can just act like adults. And I know you spend a lot of time over there. So my personal question, I've thought hard on this one. What can we, as in the people online, because I know you do all sorts of positivity stuff over on Clapper. You're part of a group over there called Team Positive Ways, I believe.
Yeah.
And so I know you do positive videos with them every morning. I spend a lot of time with you over there on that app, on your Tuesday night music lives, as well as us just co-hosting and talking and hanging out throughout the rest of the week on other lives over on Clapper.
Right.
So my question is, if everybody were to just say yes, no matter what you ask, what could we, the rest of us that online that are part of your positive circle in whatever way, what could we do for you to make your day better? Doesn't have to be something that, could pop up tomorrow. It could be completely off the wall and probably never going to happen. I'm just curious what you, in your perfect world, could ask from us, your subscribers, your fellow friends online, all that.
That's a tough question.
I tried to make it a good
I'm
one for you. This one's from me.
I did mention I had a stroke in December of 2021. Most of my friends know that I also had 2 heart attacks prior to having that stroke. So I am one of those people who genuinely believes life is a blessing. It's easier to see it when you face the possibility that your life is over, and the stroke kills people every day. The fact I survived mine and now am back to being healthy enough you'd never know I had a stroke, to me, that's just another blessing that I've been given. So as far as what can my friends do to make my day better, stay positive. There's enough negativity and people bring enough misery on themselves. Just stay positive. Don't feed into the negativity and the misery. If it's somebody you can't get along with, just move away. Move on to the friends you can. Stay, so surround yourself with people you get along with. Life is too short to spend it miserable, and I intend to not spend my life miserable. However many years I have left, and I like to believe I've got a few left, I will not spend my time being miserable.
So you heard it from Big Tank himself, y'all. What can we do for him? Be happy, be positive, and help spread it to others.
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully I'm doing that part well for you. Hopefully I'm doing the thing that you would like from us.
Well, you're my best friend on Clapper, one of the best friends I have, period.
Same.
I would like to add, I give every person I interview an opportunity to do a shout out. So if you don't mind, I'd like to do a shout out of my own.
Absolutely.
And it's first and foremost, I want to shout out Tabby, who is Chuzzlebug on Clapper, and Lizzie, and my daughters Olivia and Mary, because they're a big part of who I am. I also want to shout out you, Matthew, for being such a great friend. I want to shout out Team Positive Ways for including me in something I've been inspired by. And last but not least, I want to shout out whoever invented indoor plumbing.
Yes. I
Because
think we can all agree on that.
if you've ever had to put on shoes and a coat and take a flashlight to walk to the outhouse, then you know how much of a blessing indoor plumbing is.
Agreed. I think we can all agree on that one.
And if it helps you, Matthew, I'll wrap this up because I usually do a closing as well. Would you like me to do that?
I was just simply going to wrap up my end of just Matthew talk and welcome us all back to our originally scheduled program, Big Tank Talk.
All right, folks. Those of you that have watched my interviews as I post them each week, you know that I always say if you believe that there were questions, in this case, Matthew should have asked me but didn't, put them in the comments. I read every comment. I respond to them quite often. If it's a question, if it's something you want directed at Matthew, I'm sure he'll be happy to go into the comments and answer himself. Please give like this recording, this interview, and give me a subscription because we still got great stuff coming. Thank you for joining this very special episode of Big Tank Talk. Matthew, thank you for hosting.
It was a pleasure being here, Tank.